It's okay. You can put your hands down now. We are sure that the screen is visible and our voice is audible, so you can put your hands down now. I think for some of you, we just met a few minutes ago, and maybe there are some of you who are coming from other classes to come and join this class now. SBT 408, Toxicology. Just like we did last semester, we can make use of the chat if you have any questions, any comments, anything we want to say. You can make use of the chat during the course of the lecture. At the end of the lecture too, that is alternatively at the end of the lecture, if you want to say anything, you can raise your hand and I will enable your microphone. Call your name, you unmute yourself, then you speak, and then I can respond to it. Today, I want us to briefly, look at the overview of the course and perhaps also take a look at some introduction to the course. I want to understand if this class has some evening students or here. Or here too is that's the same thing, that is it's only weekend students that are here. In the previous class, only weekend students were there. There was no evening student, and I got to understand that there was only one evening student. Or is that evening student for only the industrial biochemistry, or generally this time around there's only one evening student for the BTech top up? That I don't understand. So is there any evening student in this class? I want to know. If you're an evening student, kindly write in the chat. Confirm that you are an evening student, so that I know that I'm teaching evening students and there are also weekend students in the class. Or let me say, kindly write in the chat in which class you belong to. Weekend. Okay. Okay, Mary says the student they were talking about was environmental evening. And weekend biochem students. Oh, okay, so it means that there are evening students in this class. Okay, okay, all right. So there are environmental chemistry evening students, and then we have weekend biochemistry students. How about weekend? Okay. There is weekend environmental here too. Yeah, weekend all weekend environmental. Okay, weekend environmental, and there's environmental evening. All right, good. Okay, I get it now. And there's also weekend industrial biochemistry. All right, that's fine. I understand. Okay, so we can continue to take an overview. Take an overview of the course. I think all of you in the class we met last semester in the SBT 401 class by chemistry. So you are abreast with how we go about our online class. So there's no need going over and over again how we do these things. Okay, so we will briefly take a look at a general overview of the course, getting to understand what toxicology is about, what toxicity is. Take a look at what are toxicants, and there we will see what the difference is between a toxicant and toxins. Along the line, we'll also look at some mechanisms of toxic activity in how toxic substances can affect biological systems, different forms of toxic effects, and the interactions of toxic substances with biosystems. We'll do some classification of toxicants, looking at toxicants which you find in air, water, soil, forms in metal, in toxic substances in the form of metals, pesticides, from living organisms, which we are referring to as biotoxins. And then we want to also look at processes of toxicokinetics. This is something which, toxicokinetics, toxicodynamics, if you were doing pharmacology, you would have been talking about pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, because these are chemical substances that will go through, a route of entry into the body into a living organism, and then they get distributed to various organs, various tissues. And of course, let's say if you take the human body, for instance, metabolism of these toxic substances then will occur chiefly in the liver. The purpose of it is for detoxification of these substances. But of course, we'll come to realize that sometimes some of the processes of metabolism that occur in the liver on these substances rather result into toxification than detoxification. And finally, process of elimination or excretion of these substances out of the body. And then the toxicodynamics, how the substance, the effect that a substance has on the body. So if toxicokinetics, you are looking at what the body does to the substance. So those are all the processes of absorption, distribution, metabolism, and then excretion. That's what the body is doing. But the toxicodynamics will refer to what the substance is doing to the body. So the effects of the chemical substance, various stages, for instance, of poisoning. Then we can also talk a bit about mechanism of antidotes. And that's kind of management and treatment of say intoxication, and processes of say carcinogenesis, the development of tumors. Some toxic substances may result into mutagenesis, can cause some mutations in genes. Some can cause things like birth defects. Take a look at some of those things. And some metric systems which are used for quantification, so like say some mathematical models for quantifying, the effect of toxic substances, looking at those response relationships. And then we can take also some specific look at what we refer to as systemic toxicology. If we say we take a respiratory system and see what the substance is doing there, hepatotoxicity, referring to toxicity in the liver, nephrotoxicity, kidneys, reproductive system, the nervous system, particularly the central nervous system, and then and also some immunotoxicity effect on the immune system. And then originally the curriculum doesn't contain anything on say ecotoxicology, but I think it's something which you must get, particularly because we're having some environmental, chemistry students amongst us. So, I mean, we should be having something on ecotoxicology as well. And of course, we are all living in an ecosystem, so we should be interested in that as well. How even taking a look at the fact that it's not only in living systems that you can have it's a breakdown of chemical substances that will be causing some toxic effects. I mean, you can have some of these processes occurring even externally as well, so that you still can talk about things like ecotoxicokinetics, ecotoxicodynamics. So these are, specifically changes that can occur with toxic substances in the environment, and not necessarily in a living system. All right, so I mean, generally that is that. We know how the continuous assessment is like already. 40%. I mean, just like we did the last time, your 40% will come from how you interact with the self-assessment questions I give to you. That's going to reflect in the exam. Everybody will get 10 marks as base for attendance, and then once you write your exam, we can derive the rest of the 30% from there, in addition to what you get over 60 in the exams. So as I was telling the other class, possibly getting to the end of this month, I hope to be in Ghana so that at least part of the semester I can meet you face to face over some time, because I'll be in Ghana for some time, so I can meet you face to face for some time before the semester ends. All right. So that is it. Generally, that is what we are going to do over toxicology. As I said earlier, if you have any questions, any comments, anything, you can use the chat. I'm monitoring the chat as the lecture is going on. So once you write there, I will attend to you. Or at the end, if you want to say anything, you can raise your hand. I will enable your microphone, call your name, and then you can speak and I'll respond. Okay, we can take an introductory lecture today. Okay. Okay. Akbelu is asking, say, how was the general performance in last semester's exams? Well, I know there's a senior colleague who was, marking your papers. Uh, he was comparing the performance of the SLT students to MLT students. I thought MLT students also some biology, some biochemistry. And he said the SLT students have done better than the MLT students. I mean, generally, uh, nobody had failed. So he told me the vast, I think he said the lowest mark also was something around 20 something over 60 or so. So I think generally you you had done okay. So, but I don't know the details of it. So that's the only information I have to give you. But I think I think this is a fair system that a lecturer teaches you, I teach you, and somebody else marks the papers. I mean that one is like what you get is what you get. It's not like your lecturer is teaching you and maybe knows in some of you and perhaps uh, use some kind of a discretion and things like no, nothing of the sort comes in. So I think the marking will be very fair on that score. All right, so let's continue. Let's continue with toxicology, and we want to understand what it is. What is toxicology from the beginning? And it's a word that is coming from Greek, toxicon, meaning poison, and logos, meaning study. So basically, toxicology is the study of uh, toxic substances, or simply can say the study of poisons. Now, this, I mean, if you say poisons or toxic substances, these are substances that can have some harmful effects on living systems. Not only living systems, but also ecosystems, as you come to see, because you remember I was mentioning the fact that even though the course didn't contain that ecotoxicology aspect of it, I've included it particularly because of the environmental chemistry students, so that everyone benefits from the course. So toxic substances can have effect on ecosystems as well, not just. And when I say ecosystem, I don't. This is not placing focus again on the living organisms in the ecosystem, but even on the non-living part of the ecosystem, the environment itself. So you have that as what toxicology is. Now, these can be, broken down into two main branches. What you refer to as toxicokinetics, which I mentioned earlier as, processes of what, let's say that when the toxic substance gets into, say, a biological system, the biological system carries out certain processes on that substance. It's just like how when you eat, when you take in food, you do talk about, the process of the food moving from the mouth through the esophagus to the stomach and then from the stomach, it goes, to the small intestines, large intestines, all of that process gets absorbed into bloodstream. Nutrients get absorbed into bloodstream, and then those nutrients later, what happens with them? We talk about all that stuff. So the same thing here. You have toxic substances. Uh, when they get into the body. By the way, we don't in this case, because we are in toxicology, we are talking about toxicology. We specifically are referring to these chemical substances as toxic, but these same things will happen to say even drug substances like medicinal substances, the same things which will happen to them. The only thing is that the emphasis is placed on the fact that uh, um, they have therapeutic effect. But of course, you do know that at a certain concentration, these substances can also become toxic. Instead of having a therapeutic effect, they will rather be having a toxic effect. So these same principles cut across the field of toxicology and pharmacology. Then the toxicodynamics is the uh, what the substance is doing to the body, the effect that the substance is having on the body. And that's when you talk about is the substance affecting me. We'll come to see at different levels what the substance is doing to the body, the effect it's having on the body. The toxicokinetics is referring to the processes that the body is carrying out on this substance. Primarily is doing that, the body does go through processes to detoxify these substances, as I mentioned earlier. So the various steps, toxicokinetics will look at those things. Now, this field of toxicology can also be broken down into different subfields. For instance, what is referred to as preventive toxicology, which focuses on, say, the prevention of potential hazards. So this is more like putting in some safety protocols in order to prevent some, sort of accidents, disasters, from, toxic effects that can occur coming out of some of these, accidental occurrences. It can be in a laboratory, can be in an industry where you are working. If you're working in a hospital, you put in some protocols to follow to prevent, hazards. In the university, even in the lab, you have some technical protocols that are to be followed in order to prevent some hazards in the lab. So when you put all of these things together, this the development of these protocols and their use and all of that, all of this falls under preventive toxicology. Now you also have what's you refer to as clinical toxicology, where the effect of toxic substances is explored at different levels. So, if you take an organism, say the human body, and you talk broadly of it as this particular substance is toxic to the body. That's like you are just talking of it at the organismic level. That maybe you say that mercury is toxic to human beings. That's an organismic level. But if you move and refer to a particular system, let's say the nervous system, so you will now be studying the effect of the substance on the nervous system. Or you move to the organ level to talk of the effect of the substance on a particular organ. So what will be the effect of maybe some nerve agent, say on the brain, for instance? That is an organ. Or you talk of the effect of alcohol on the liver, or the effect of say some gas on, or maybe let's say cigarette smoke, for instance. Let's just roughly say, let's say not an element or a compound, but because cigarette smoke consists of several components, and you say the effect of it on the lungs, then you are referring to a particular organ. You can even go further to talk about the effect of a toxic substance on the level of tissues. So here again, that has gone a bit deeper, lower than the organs. Because if you take an organ, that organ can consist of several tissues, different kinds of tissues. So you speak about specific tissues that a toxic substance is having effect on. I mean, in the clinical settings, they do some imaging where they do some dissection of organs and do some high resolution microscopy to study specific tissues that are affected by some specific substances. And particularly at the level of biochemistry, then you start to be talking about specific cells. What happens to some specific cells, when they are exposed to some substance. So you can have this, at these different levels. You can also have what we refer to as industrial toxicology, which primarily is just like I was referring to earlier, like with the preventive toxicology. So you see, you don't really have thin lines between these things because they will have some interchanges sometimes, intersections sometimes. Because if you're doing industrial toxicology, you are certainly doing some preventive toxicology, because of course, as you can see, there is even here development of preventive protocols. So you have some what you refer to as sanitary standards that are developed. How do you develop them? You develop them so that when you adhere to them, when you comply with them, you prevent possible, or even if you don't prevent, at least you minimize the occurrence of some toxic effects on the say the workers of the industry. Then even if you have those sanitary protocols in place, you follow them, sometimes still it's not even an accident per se, but sometimes by exposure to the working environment, what is there, some people still may develop some sort of health conditions. And if those health conditions does occur, there should be treatment protocols. So you have when you put all of these together, this all comes together to have what you're referring to as industrial toxicology. So like a workplace toxicology. And you don't think of it as only for persons that are working in some maybe chemical industry, stuff like that. Even for persons working in places like university, like in our university, Accra Technical University, for instance, so we have laboratories. And so, of course, we are exposed to chemicals. We are exposed to different substances in their pure forms. And so there should be some protocols in place for the use of the laboratories as much as possible to prevent harmful effects, at least minimize them, because in that environment you can have some exposure to some of these substances that can be harmful. Sometimes over a certain period of time, a long period of time working with these things, they can begin to have some unintended effects on an individual. So you'll find people working in different places, different research labs that because of their exposure to certain things they've been working with for a long time, and they begin to experience some health conditions. All right. Then the ecological toxicology, which sometimes is shortened as ecotoxicology, where the effect of these chemical substances is focused. The study is focused not only on say the living organisms, but this time around the focus is on say populations, because now you're talking about an ecosystem. So it's more of populations and the habitats of these populations. So like biocenosis is the interaction between the populations of different species within a particular habitat. You want to study how toxic effects of a substance can spread from one population within a particular habitat to another population of species, things like that. So for instance, you do talk about things like now there's a talk about Ebola again and some other diseases which have been talked about in the past. Usually, there's a talk of say maybe there's a bird or some bats has fed on something and dropped the seed somewhere, and some livestock like maybe some pigs or some cattle also feeds on it. So that's a transfer from a population of say birds to, say, some livestock. And then that then goes on to affect human beings later. So you have this sort of study of the trace of toxic substance from one population of organisms to another. And then also, as I was saying earlier, you also talk about, say, the transformation of the chemical substance in the environment. So this time around, we talk about biotransformation, which is the metabolism of a toxic substance in the body, primarily in the liver, which is supposed to result into detoxification, but sometimes that can rather be resulting into toxification. But now, even a substance that is not in a biological system but just exposed to, for instance, light or the source of sunlight, or say heat, just in the environment, or it's just exposed to oxygen in the environment, and it gets degraded, and the products of that toxic substance in the environment, maybe the substance itself might not be toxic, but rather it is the products of degradation that rather become toxic. So you find these things occurring in the environment as well. So these things fall under what we refer to as ecotoxicology. Right. Now, what is toxicity? So, as the definition says, the degree to which a substance can cause harm. So here again, the focus here, even though is on a biological or a living organism, we've been talking about ecotoxicology as well now. So you can have the degree to which a substance can cause harm, not only to these biological systems, but also to environmental systems as well, ecosystems as well as toxicity. If you talk of it in terms of biological systems, you can also put it in a much simpler way to say that this is it's a measure of incompatibility with a biological or a living system. Because if a substance is compatible with a system, it will not be causing harm to it. And so if a substance is causing harm and that toxicity is a degree, then if it's a degree of the harm that is causing, then it can be a measure of incompatibility with that biological system. And so, for instance, if you what we refer to as xenobiotics, any foreign substance into a biological system, you can refer to that as a xenobiotic. So, for instance, if you take in a paracetamol if you take a paracetamol into your body, that paracetamol is a xenobiotic because it's a foreign substance that you are taking into the biological system. And now you see, if you look at say the effect of, say, the exposure to a substance that is a xenobiotic, the relationship you generally see is that you can have the substance you can have the biological system upon exposure to the xenobiotic. You have the effect of that exposure increasing gradually depending on the dose or concentration of a substance. So you see, you can have that xenobiotic effects increasing up to a certain point, highest as the dose increases. And you see that you can see at a certain point that the effect of exposure to dose, even as the dose increases, is also here, reducing. I mean, that is to say that it comes to a point that you can no longer be measuring the effect of the dose to the exposure when that system is no longer in existence. Like if there is a fatality, for instance, because at a very highest point you have a certain effect, whether it is a toxic effect or it's um, a therapeutic effect. That is its highest that you can reach. Then at that point, there will be elimination. So the substance is going to be getting eliminated out of the body. And so even though you have concentration increasing because the system is eliminating the substance out of the body, you have the effect of the substance, reducing. All right. Now, you can also classify toxic substances depending on their sources. And generally, you can have toxic substances which are coming from natural sources. I mean, natural sources like living organisms, say plants, some animal sources, some microorganisms. So these toxic substances are coming from these sources that are natural. But you can have synthetic substances, toxic substances, which are generally maybe synthesized in through some industrial processes or by what you refer to as anthropological sources like human activity. So you see things like human municipal waste. I mean, pesticides, herbicides that are being used in farms, for instance. These are synthetic sources, or chemicals being used in the mining industry, or let's say in a petroleum industry, where you can have some oil or chemical spillage, for instance. These things are synthetic sources. They are not natural. So you can broadly distinguish between the sources of these toxicants this way. Natural. Sometimes synthetic is also referred to as anthropological. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at some specific toxins, some specific toxic substances. And at this point, let's distinguish. I mentioned earlier something about say the difference between a toxicant and a toxin. I mean, if you say a toxicant can be any substance that is causing, a harmful effect. But a toxin is specifically coming from a living organism. So in other words, a toxin is also a toxicant anyway. So we can say that not all toxicants are toxins, but all toxins are toxicants. We can say that. Because if you say a toxicant, it's referring to all the substances that can be, toxic, that can be harmful to a biological system or to an ecosystem. But when you say a toxin, that substance is coming from a living organism. Right. Now let's take some common examples of some of these toxic substances, and so we can relate with them and see. Just take a look at what you're referring to in terms of their toxicity, things like that. So we say methanol. Methanol is a chemical which you meet in the chemistry lab. Use it for extraction, for different chemical analytical processes. What's the source of it? It's from industrial synthesis. But of course, in the metabolism of, say, carbohydrates, or let's take generally metabolic processes in living systems, even in us human beings, there's some amount of methanol that is produced, but that is at a very negligible amount that it will not, it does not cause us any harm. It's very, very negligible. But to have methanol at toxic level like this methanol is synthesized industrially. So that's what this means. Now you come across metrics like what we refer to as LD50. Sometimes you see LC50. So what I intend to do is, like, as we look at the substances, then we'll be introducing some of these specific toxicological terms. So it's not like all of it will be all poured on us at once, as if we're going to be, cramping all those things in our minds. But as we go along, then we'll be introducing some relevant toxicological terms gradually. So when you want to take, say, LD50, LD, you can say it's a lethal dose. And sometimes it's, say, LC, it's a lethal concentration. But if you say lethal dose 50, what does it mean? So usually the toxic substances the effect of the toxic substances are studied with laboratory animals. Let's say maybe some rats, mice, that substance is administered to a number of these laboratory organisms. And then what is observed? So if a substance is administered to, say, 10 organisms, let's say 10 mice, and the dosage is varied, such that we see a particular dosage, a particular concentration of the substance results into the death of 5 of the mice out of the 10. That is 50% of the laboratory animals that have died from the consumption of that substance at that concentration. So that concentration becomes the lethal dose 50. And so for methanol, we have a lethal dose 50 as 1 gram per kilogram. And a kilogram is body weight. So the body weight of the mice that were used to study and establish this value, LD50. 1 gram of methanol per kilogram of the body weight of the mice which were used, will result into 50% death of those mice. And then there is something also you see on chemicals, say in the lab or wherever you're working. Sometimes you see some of these signs, like this diamond sign, which refers to different things. So the blue part refers to health hazard, the red fire hazard, the yellow instability. I mean, sometimes that's like volatility, Then you have a specific hazard. So if there is some specific hazard, like is it an acid or it's a base? Is it strong acid? If it's strong acid, strong bases, they can result into um, burns, or is the substance corrosive? Is it an oxidizer? Say, is it an oxidant, for instance? That is a substance, radioactive. So you see these things, and then you have W cancelled. I mean, use no water. So, for instance, if a substance upon interaction with water can, result into some vigorous reaction, like how if you pour water into, say, a strong acid, and you can have a spillage and things like that. So you do have such signs that use no water with certain substances. So when you see these signs, they will usually have some numbers in them, and the numbers are from 0 to 4. The higher the number, the higher the risk. So the health hazard, 4 is deadly. 0 means normal. Similarly, fire hazard, 0 will mean it will not burn, but 4 is going to mean that, even below a temperature of 73 degrees, say Fahrenheit, because it's an American system, the temperatures are in Fahrenheit, you can have, some ignition of such. Usually what we see, like highly flammable. And instability, 0 means the substance is stable. 4 means the substance may detonate, meaning it can explode. And the white square, that is where you have the specific hazards. Those ones, there will be some specific signs. Either it's written acid, or ALK means alkaline, or COR means corrosive, OX means it's an oxidant. And then you have the radioactive sign, or W cancelled, means that use no water. So you will see some of these signs on this on the packaging of some of these substances. Right. Atropine. So atropine, it's a drug which is used, they say, in eye drops, but it can also, it has some side effects, like causing of dry mouth, for instance, because it inhibits secretion of saliva and mucus. And that's some kind of a toxic effect that the substance has. the name is coming from the source that is coming from the plants, the Atropa species. So that is why it's being referred to as atropine. So you see, here too we have an LD50 to be 90 milligrams per kilogram, and that's toxic, really toxic. If you look at it, I mean, the substance we've seen before, this methanol says 1 gram per kilogram, and here this is milligram, 90 milligram. So this is a smaller amount, very small amount, like even less than 10 times smaller than methanol. That will result into the 50% of the laboratory animals' death. So that is really toxic. So you see why medications will have what we refer to as active ingredients. They are actually small amounts that are put into other what we refer to as excipients, different components, binders, things like that coming together to give you a drug. But if you have the substance in its pure form, it's quite toxic. All right, we have sodium cyanide. Sodium cyanide. So I think those of you in some of these mining communities, you would have heard a lot of stuff about cyanides, because they usually use them in gold extraction. I remember some years back I had one project student who was working with, I think, is it gold fields also. It was in Obuasi, I think so. And he was doing his project work on cyanide determination in some different waters, tap water, well water, some boreholes in some communities around Obuasi thereabout, because they realized that due to some illegal mining activities in those areas, there was some contamination of some waters had been detected, and so he was interested in doing that, because cyanide is one of those very toxic substances. Historically, cyanides were used for these judicial executions. When people were sentenced to death in some countries, like say in the United States, they use cyanide. There are some injections they give to these people, with cyanide, and what the cyanide does is it induces some cell suffocation. It's a sort of cause some breathlessness, contraction of the muscles around the chest. So the person actually is some sort of a chemical suffocation of that kind of care from cyanide. And you see the LD50, 10 milligrams per kilogram. So this is even more toxic than what we just saw. What we saw earlier now was 90 milligrams per kilogram, and here you are, say 10 milligrams. So this is really, really toxic. So again, it's like 10 times more toxic. It appears we are just going higher and higher. Toxicity. Now you see, again, what we were looking at much earlier, you can see toxic, this health hazard. The blue is 4. That's highest, deadly. And we see fire is 0. And the yellow, what was it? Instability is also 0. All right. Now we can take another one. Ooh, this is another one which is even more toxic. 8.6 milligram per kilogram. That is the LD50. I mean, this is mustard gas. Usually you have the mustard, there are different forms of mustard gases. Sometimes here in place of sulfur, you can have like a nitrogen, for instance. For this substance which was used, say, in the First World War, and it's been used in different warfares in different places, like Iraq, Iran. Is the use of some of these substances that resulted into some of the United Nations conventions against the use of chemical weapons, because this is very dangerous. What it does is it causes blisters on the skin. Like, they are, what you see in the picture here, like some shells. It's like some kind of bombs that are released from aircrafts, and it's like it comes down like some yellow cloud over the place that is released, and it begins to cause burns on the skin and serious chemical burns, and it's very fatal. Results into long-term defects that can uh, be passed on to offsprings. It can cause cancers, so this is one of those chemicals, very dangerous. Of course, coming from a synthetic source. We have coumarin. This is coming from plants. So you see, it's coming from a natural source, from plants. So you find it in some fruits, and it's used even in cosmetics, like in place of vanilla. What gives vanilla flavor, for instance, in soaps and in some other products. You see this thing common that has become common in Ghana now. They call it this kind of smoke in I don't know how you guys call it in Ghana, and it has some of this thing in it. I mean, tobacco. Those who smoke, there are a lot of toxic substances in those things. In addition to like maybe some heavy metals, you have some of these kind of chemical substances. I mean, a whole lot of things that are consumed from such smokes that has a very serious effect on the lungs, and it's really sort of strange that in this day and age people are still smoking. Because some time back, smoking was like a high lifestyle. People use it to show that yes, they are guys, they living big or things like that. I mean, but after so many years, with so many studies, so many discoveries, it's clear, the kind of serious health effects that smoking has. And so now in some countries, you realize that many young people, uh, their lifestyle is completely different from the lifestyle of, let's say, the young people of, say, some decades ago. These young people are living more healthy lives. I mean, current young people in developed countries are living more healthy lives because there's so much of health information, so much of knowledge, much of understanding into these things that they won't go consuming things like this, like smokes or even alcohol and things like that, because the health effects is clearly known now. So why do you still continue living the old life of your grandparents? Now you see here to the toxicity, you can see it's even much more toxic. LD50, 0.5 milligrams per kilogram. Now, let's take dioxins. Now, this is something which, like for those of us in Ghana, should be very much concerned about this because of the indiscriminate burning of waste around the whole place. Because the primary source of dioxins is by burning. In addition to, say, some industrial processes, but much of it comes from burning. And in fact, I don't know if I mentioned this in any of the classes before, because I mentioned it in some classes that, look, if you look at the kind of pollution which comes from not far from us, what you call agbogloshi, with the number of the population around that, that whole place, including us in ATU, and you compare that to the destruction of the waters with this illegal mining in outside of Accra and things like that, they are actually at par, the same level. So that, like, the seriousness that should be attributed to illegal mining, it is that same seriousness that has to be attributed to indiscriminate burning, not only in Agbogloshi, but just around the whole place. You see anybody just gets up, sometimes even in front of, let's say, National Theatre or A4 Sutherland Park, all over, just around us. And around us, around that whole enclave there, even in front of some big hotel, somebody just gets up and just set fire to anything, and the thing is burning. You can't do that in serious in serious societies, because you're just polluting the whole environment, and it's deadly. Because dioxins, I think in one of our lectures, maybe we come to see the very serious effect this can have even on unborn babies. So it's really serious, from different sources of smoke, from burning of paper, and even indiscriminate use of pesticides. Releases some of these things. You do hear in the news sometimes, some people die because of the use of some kind of pesticide. They just got something from market. Somebody told them this to do something. Then they took it, and later you hear the news, somebody and the family have been affected, some fatalities, some children die and things like that. So this is it's a serious thing. Close to us in ATU, we have the publishing company there. that has an incinerator just behind us, always burning, and you will see the smoke up. And you see, close to the mosque, there is a block there, just in adjacent to the students' hostels around there, which is, the offices of the lecturers. And though I was given an office there, I scarcely go there because the smoke there, you can actually sometimes you see that you have soot on the windows or on the tables. You see black soot. So you can really imagine the amount of time you spend on campus and all of that, how you are exposed to some of these things. And as persons, studying some of these things, I think you can become more serious and become advocates, to deal with some of these problems. Some other sources can be like, natural, like say some volcano uh, eruptions. Maybe there can be forest fires which are natural. I mean, those ones are not they are not artificial. They are not man-made. And they can also result into, the release of dioxins into the atmosphere. Now we can move to toxins, like, these are toxic substances coming from living organisms. Let me take what we refer to as Bangalore toxins. It's one of the most toxic substances we come across are these toxins from snakes and what we refer to as snakes or crates. And they have these different compounds in their toxins. You have what you refer to the alpha, the beta, the gamma, K Bangalore toxins. All of these they serve as some nerve agents. They cause paralysis. So that's what the toxins of these snakes usually is for them to use on their prey, so that when it causes paralysis of their prey, then they can feed on them. And so you see they act on the central nervous system, which will cause some form of paralysis in this. And you can see the value there, 0.014 milligram per kilogram. That's very toxic, really, really toxic. You do have toxic toxins. This is something which we commonly hear of, some food poisoning from shellfish, like some of these oysters. And the source of it is from some cyanobacteria and algae, which when these shellfish feed on them, they get contaminated. And so when humans go to feed on such, they get such food poisoning, which is also a serious, it's a very, a toxic substance. As you can see, LD50 now is been gone down much more. 9 microgram per kilogram. That is serious, very seriously, poisonous in that sense. In these toxins were also used in chemical weapons historically. So you can see the sort of things. This is coming from a natural source, but once a substance which is coming from a natural source is studied, it can be synthesized as well. And because if you need it in large amounts, you may have to synthesize it and have it in very large amount before you can be using it for such. Or in some cases, because of how very poisonous it is, you just need a little. If you just extract it from some of these cyanobacterial algae, uh, some they just use it to line some lettuce. Some historical use of some of these things were just, they used in letters, post it, send it to somebody, person reads or touches it and doesn't know, and the person gets poisoned at the end of the day. Some fishes also have some of these toxins, like the tetrodotoxin coming from these species of fishes, the Pseudomonas species. Sorry, the Tetraondotimorphis species. Some bacteria, like the Pseudomonas species and the Vibrio species, they also have some of these, toxins there. All right, so Akbelu says, can we classify venom from scorpions also under the Bangalore toxin? Scorpions. Do I know if I don't really remember the kind of toxins that the scorpions. Can you quickly check and write it here? Let's see if it is also a Bangalore toxin or is a different type of toxin. I can't tell over my head, because these Bangalore toxins, you can find them in other organisms as well. Then you can see here too is the LD50 is 8 microgram per kilogram. All right, racin is also coming from plants, right? Some castor oil. Yes, this also, I think there's some history behind the use of this castor oil to send some letters. I think if my memory serves me well, there were some letters some years back that were actually lined with this poison from ricin, the Ricinus communis that was sent to, I think, the White House in America and things like that, and it was detected. And these two you can see there. You see the LD50, 3 microgram per kilogram. So that is also a very toxic substance coming from some, seeds of a plant, the Ricinus communis. Another toxin coming from, I think this is actually like one of the most, poisonous snakes that some of these snakes that are somewhere in Australia also. Pipoxin. And yeah, LD50, 2 microgram per kilogram. Like, I think some of these snakes that live in some very dry, isolated places. You see that very, poisonous toxins coming from this. All these are neurotoxins. They act on the nervous system, causing paralysis. And once the nervous system is not able to transfer, signals, it cannot be signal transduction, to various parts of the body. Body the muscles cannot relax, contract, and so that gets to the heart. For instance, the heart is not able to, the heart muscles are not able to get relax, contract, that movement, that heartbeat, in the end, it will result into fatality. Some spiders are also poisonous. A lot of these spiders, you find them in some deep forests. Particularly, you find some of these poisonous. You find, yes, I know, Mary, scorpions, yes, is a neurotoxin, but bangaroo toxins are also neurotoxins. But what Akpelo is asking is, is there like a specific class of it? Is there some specific class of it also? If you say a neurotoxin, you only mean that toxin is acting on the nervous system. I mean, the bangaroo toxin is also a neurotoxin. And you have so I was talking about these spiders. A lot of these, you find them in South America, because they have these very thick jungles in which you have some of these uh, uh, poisonous organisms like these spiders. Lactrodectus species, for instance, has this the lactoinsectotoxin, lactotoxins, which are specific to vertebrates like us. In these other ones, the lactoinsectotoxin will be, sort of, you're using it to trap, the insect for their food. And you have some of these, the lateral crustotoxins. These are coming from some crustaceans. And you can see the toxicity there is 10 microgram per kilogram. So that is also a really toxic substance. Batrachotoxin. So coming from some frogs, some kind of a beetle, some birds. You see, a lot of these, like I was saying earlier, you find in some of these very thick jungles, like the Amazon. Find some of these organisms there. So this batrachotoxin can be neurotoxic and cardiotoxic. So here you see, so if you say a neurotoxin, you are like what we said earlier, you are referring to the systemic level of the effect of the substance. But when you say cardiotoxic, it means you are now referring to what the organ level, because particularly on the heart. So obviously, I mean, they are related, called a neurotoxin that is resulting into some paralytic effect will then have effect on the heart, the contraction of the muscles there, which will then result into blood not getting pumped to different parts of the body adequately. The tissues will get starved, the cells will get starved, and that eventually will result into death. And you can see that the LD50 is 2 microgram per kilogram. The interesting thing here is, you see this? This is a frog. It looks like gold. And I see it looks like, it reminds me of the statement, all that glitters is not gold. So we see this frog and you say, this is a beautiful frog, and you're going close to it, that can be really dangerous. All right. The titanotoxin coming from, this is one of the most toxic substances in the world that you can see. Look at the LD50, 0.001 microgram per kilogram. You see a reason why tetanus injection is given to women when I think when they're about to um, go into labor or so, or after that, they give them this tetanus injection because historically this bacterial infection has been very deadly, not resulting into spasms, muscle spasms, you know, and it's really 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 uh, toxic coming from a bacteria, the Clostridium tetani. There are some Clostridium that also has, so I think this is the last one, the Clostridium botulinum. Is you see, is I think the botulinum toxin. I read something somewhere. It's like the most uh, toxic substance so far. That's just there was a very minute amount of this um, toxin that was estimated at that amount of toxin, that amount of say the botulinum toxin can wipe out the whole population of human beings because it's really really toxic. But it also has some use. You see the picture there. Actually, we have something we call this. I think is it a Botox therapy or something. People use it like in um, the beauty therapy industry. You have this botulinum treatment against aging or like wrinkling. So you see, they have some Botox injection, but this is done by some specialists because the concentration is they're very very low, and it has that effect of anti-wrinkling, and so you see such treatments also being given to some people. But of course, there are different types, there are different forms of these um, toxin. It is the type E and F that are harmful and can cause human disease. And so the types that are being used for this uh, are different from this. So like what you say, so types A to G, they have types A to G. So some different types are used for this um, beauty therapy, but not E and F because E and F they are harmful. All right, so I think this is where I will end our introductory class, which is just to introduce us broadly to toxicology and sort of also introduce us to some specific examples of toxic substances and their effect and their sources, you know. So if you have any um, questions, contributions, the floor is open. So if you have any questions, any contributions, you can write in the chat or you can raise your hand and I will enable your microphone, you speak.